Welcome back, everyone. This is part 5 of our 1701E Sovereign class starship build. And so far, we've managed to assemble the nacelles and get them lit. In this video, we are going to put lights in the engineering hull, which you see in front of you, assemble all that, and finish it off so that we're only left with the saucer. So just like the nacelles, we're going to use some LED strips, and I'm going to try not to block the video this time with my hands to kind of show you guys how to solder those. So once again, you just always heat the contact pad first, never the solder, touch the solder to the contact pad, and that will let you just run a little bit of solder onto it. All right. After that, we tin the ends of our wires, just adding a little bit of solder to them. And now that they both have a little bit of solder on them, we're just going to use the soldering iron to put them together. That's all there is to it. And to hold the LED strip inside the middle of the ship, I've cut just a piece of styrene into a strip, and we're going to glue that down to this part of the molding that holds the pylons for the nacelles. So we're going to use a little bit of sandpaper just to remove the paint from there so we've got a good gluing surface. Right now, once again, we're just going to remove the backing off that LED strip, and we're going to just adhere it to the strip we've made. All right, and now we're just going to use a little bit of modeling cement. And glue that in. All right, now it's time to mount the nacelles into the engineering hull. So we're just going to push the wires through the hole that we made previously. And just a little bit of modeling cement on our gluing surfaces. And a little bit of cement on the bottom seam. So now that we've put the nacelles on the engineering hull, we've connected the wires from each of them. Now we're going to give it some leads to take it up into the rest of the ship so it can all be connected together. So we're just going to connect those and use a little bit of solder for the connection. Now, believe it or not, this is actually one of the most dangerous parts of assembling this model, is working with heat shrink tubing. Because if heat can affect this plastic enough to shrink it, it can affect the model plastic enough to warp it. So I've laid down some cloths to kind of protect my model from the heat, and I'm going to be aiming away from it just to kind of get this heat shrink shrunk. Now this ship has such a nice big saucer. I'm going to do all of my major connections in that saucer section. So I'm just taking the wire from my LED strip for the hole, bringing it up into the saucer. My wires for the nacelles, I'm bringing those up into the saucer. And after that, I just need a wire that's actually going to go down to the stand. We're going to put all of those into the saucer section and just close up this engineering hole. All right, so just a little mock-up here, as if we had completed all these connections up inside the saucer. We've connected those wires. We have one running out from the bottom for the stand. We're going to connect these and see if we get lights. All right, and we definitely have lights there. All right, this is one of my favorite parts. We've got the deflector dish, nicely molded, but the detail doesn't really show through the paint. So we grab our enamel stain and we wash it. Here it is after the wash. And with just a little bit of light behind it. All right, now that all the electronics are in, I've glued these two halves together and I've laid down this plate and the trench for the deflector dish. Now after that, we have to really start working on some of these seams. Like this seam back here, kind of that hole right there, and these along the belly. Now for some of these, you get a few parts that are going to cover that up. So we don't need to worry about this little seam in front or this little part in back. But we will need, oh, and this middle part will be done with this kind of plug that holds the stand. But we will need to worry about these and this. So the putty I used earlier was an acrylic putty that you can just kind of smooth into a crack and be just fine. But you cannot sand that. So it will fill a crack, but it'll still show there was a seam there, which is fine in some cases. But here, we're really going to need to use a putty like Tamiya White, which will get very hard and will let us sand those down into a smooth surface. And then we will still use the acrylic putty for some of the gaps, like the gap here, where we're filling a very small area, and there's still a grid line there, so if it kind of shrinks and the grid line still shows, that'll be all right. All right, so on some of the seams that I won't need to sand, we're going to be applying just a little bit of acrylic putty. You can see I've already masked off the deflector before I put that piece in, just to make it really easy. And these cracks I'm mostly just filling so that they can catch some of my light blocking paint. All right, there you can see we've used a wet Q-tip just to wipe off the excess, just leaving that putty just in the seams. You see that along the back we've done the same thing. Just laid down the acrylic putty and wiped away the excess. We'll have to come back and fill that little bit there. We'll see if anything else shrinks overnight. But yeah, those little gaps very easily covered like that. Now on a seam like this that I'm really going to want to be able to sand, I've kind of marked off the area I'm going to be working on. I'm going to apply some Tamiya putty, and this is going to get a lot harder. It's very sandable. Then before it dries, we're going to work it a little bit with an old dull blade here. So at this point we have sanded down all the hard sandable putty, and we have smoothed out all of that softer putty. And we're going to now add on these detail pieces. They'll cover up some of those seams, but I think we'll be glad that we got things filled underneath them to help with the light blocking. Once we glue those pieces on properly, we're going to spray the joints with some black to block light along those seams. And after that, we'll do a base coat. Here's the model after we've shot a little bit of primer. And I'm very happy how we were able to leave all the detail here without having to sand around those seams. And took care of the seam right back here very well. I think the seams here will probably need a little bit more work. And very happy with how we were able to fill the gaps up here by the deflector dish, and how good that deflector dish looks with just a little bit of a wash to bring out the details. The kit fits together pretty well. I didn't have any gaps here in this section, and this back seam, just a little bit of putty and sanding took care of that one. Now let's see what it looks like with the lights. All right, so here we are. We have lit up the ship. Just put power to all those LED strips we've been putting in. So you can see we've got a very nice, consistent blue nacelle. A very nice look to the red Bussard collectors. And there we have all of the engineering hull lights. So you really don't need too much to get those all to shine. There's our deflector dish. And let's see if we can zoom in to that. But nice to see that we don't have any light leaks on that. And just coming around to the other side of that engineering hull. All right, so that is it for this stage of the build. We're going to take a few days off, try and get the saucer section drilled out for all of the windows it has. So we'll be back soon, and in our next video, we'll finish the building. And hopefully the video after that, we will paint and decal the ship. Thanks for watching.